broth going here. I'm going to do this big pot, the 4-gallon pot, and I've got 3 chicken carcasses in here. I pressure cooked some stewing hens and picked the meat. And I've got broth going. Normally my onions and celery would not be chopped, but I just had them in the freezer. Like that. So I've got bay leaves, garlic that I don't even peel, a couple carrots, onions, celery. I'm going to add peppercorns and apple cider vinegar. I'm going to bring this to a boil and then simmer on low overnight. Tomorrow morning, first thing, I can throw it in the pressure canner. So as charming as it looks, my pot of broth is ready for me. I'm going to skim off a bunch of the fat and get ready to can here. I've got my pressure canner. And I've got some jars, which I'm going to give a quick wash and get these going. So in order to not have to strain this big heavy pot into another pot and make more dishes, etc., I strain it straight into the jars. These are wash jars. I just freshly washed them. They don't have to be sterilized for pressure canning, which is awesome because it saves a step. So then I just scoop the broth, and my pressure canner fits 7 quarts. So I'm going to fill them all up now. So it's been proven now that for pressure canning, I'm not 100% sure on water bath canning, but I know for pressure canning that you don't have to soak your lids first. So I can just wipe the rims with a wet cloth, clean wet cloth, put on the lids, put on the rings, and put it in the pressure canner. Now, the pressure canner mine calls for 3 quarts of hot water, and I used to like boil water and this and that. But now I just get my tap water screaming hot, fill 3-quart jars, pour it in, good to go. So when you're wiping the rims, you're also checking to make sure there's no cracks. Really should have checked that before, but sometimes it just, you don't catch it before, or you're in a rush and then you catch it now. Got my rings, and you make sure that they're not rusty, they're not bent, and you're doing what is fingertip tight. So you do it till it doesn't want to spin anymore on its own, and then just a little bit more. You're not cranking them on. So I've got these all in the pressure canner. Check your pressure canner before, make sure that the ring is good, make sure that you can see through the vent hole, all those sort of things. Yes, I can see through it. Yes, my ring is not cracked or brittle. So now I can put it on, and then I'm going to turn my pressure canner on high, and once steam starts coming out of the vent, I set the timer for 10 minutes, and then I pop this bad boy on. It's going to come up to pressure. Depending on your sea level is what pounds of pressure. So we're 12 pounds of pressure. And then I believe these are 25 minutes, but I always check my book every time just to be certain. So the reason I do the broth overnight, I realize that's not something everyone will be comfortable with, depending on your stove, etc. You may not be comfortable with that. The reason I do that though is that after the bones are all picked of meat, so for me it was about mid-afternoon that I picked the meat off, I just immediately got the broth going, which is pretty simple. It's not a recipe so much as like a guideline or a formula. Guys, could you be a little quieter in there? Freya, I think your plate is in the dishwasher.
Yep, you place.
So the broth can just gently go all night, which means it gets a nice long simmer. It's a nice big pot of broth. It kind of boils down a little bit, not a lot. You know, I lose a couple inches. I have it on really low. But then it just means the broth is more concentrated. It's less jars to fill and can. And then in the morning when I get up, the broth is hot and ready to go. Versus if I had put the bones in the fridge and then started it this morning, first I would have had to find space in the fridge for 3 chicken carcasses. And then I would simmer it all day, and then I would need to find somewhere cold to put it overnight. But here it's either too warm or like way too cold that your broth is going to be a frozen solid block of ice. There's not many months a year when I can just put it outside, and that's a lot of fridge space to find. And then in the morning I have to heat the broth up because the broth needs to be hot for canning. So by just simmering it overnight, it just simplifies things. So in the morning I just have to fill jars, throw it in the pressure canner, and you know, it's 9:30 in the morning, and with very little effort, and I slept in, I have a batch of broth in the canner. If it was winter and we were going to be eating a lot of soup, I would probably just make a bunch of the broth into soup, but I don't really feel like having much soup right now. But we still use a decent amount of broth. We cook rice in broth, there's broth in sauces, there's things like that that I often need a little bit of broth for, and to just have it shelf stable is so convenient that once you've done it a few times, you get more comfortable with it, and it's so nice to have. What do you think? Are you finally happy, baby? You were not happy this morning. This baby sleeps really well, but she wakes up cranky. I think it's because she sleeps so long. She wakes up hungry. Are you hungry? Yes, you were. So, the timer was up. I took it off the heat. The pressure went down, and then you wait. Then this goes down the back, and then you wait at least 10 minutes before you can take this off. Now, I'm not going to open this now because it's a two-handed deal that I need to make sure I don't burn myself with steam. But I'm going to open this up, and then I'm going to move them to the counter, and they're going to cool down for 24 hours until I put them in the cool room. So they all look good. The thing about pressure canning is that they're pretty much all sealing by the time you get them out. Like by the time you open this up, they're starting to seal. And this smells strongly of chicken broth because of how the jars vent. And what's really cool is they're going to continue to bubble like that for a while. The thing with the fat, from what I've read, so I skim the fat, but it's hard to get all the fat. But what I've read is that the fat can make it so they don't seal properly. So I compensate that by putting them down a little bit lower and not filling them all the way to the top. And I haven't had issues. I only have the odd one that doesn't seal, which happens sometimes anyways.